Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby bringing you another quick tank review, this time of a Tier 8 American medium tank, an autoloader, the T69. Now the T69 is an action-packed tank that doesn't do a huge amount of damage per drum, but it's able to unload its 90mm cannon very quickly. It's able to put out an extraordinary amount of damage in a very short time, and it also has the maneuverability to be able to pull back, reload, and then re-engage. If you like autoloaders and you like gun depression and you have great tactical awareness, then this might be the tank for you. So let's take a quick look at its stats. This tank has got a fairly standard 1,350 hit points for tier 8 medium tanks. It's quite light at 35 tons when fully loaded, and it has an alright engine power of 550, which gives this a fairly good horsepower to ton ratio. Now its speed limit is very nice, 51.5 kilometers an hour. And its traverse speed of 42 degrees a second give this the maneuverability to be able to use that engine power and the speed limit to traverse the terrain that it needs to get around. Now the armor on this tank can be fairly troll. It's got 100mm of frontal armor, which is very well angled, so as well as 76mm of side armor, but very poor rear armor of 38mm. So if you're firing Hesh or HE, this is your opportunity to wreck a T69. If you're able to angle the tank and go backwards and forwards at this kind of an angle, you sometimes can pull off miracle bounces. Now the turret armor on this tank is 152mm at the front, 76 at the side, and 114 at the rear. Even though its rear armor is 114mm, really if you shoot here, this very flat surface, it's likely to go in. The side as well, 76mm around this flat surface is very likely to go in. The frontal armor is able to pull off some trolling. If you're able to shoot around here when he's slightly angling his turret, say in this direction, it's very likely to go in. If he's aiming directly at you, the 152mm of turret armor can pull off bounces, but don't rely on it is what I'm saying. It's a very big turret, and this tank does not have a fantastic mantlet, albeit that it's very angled as you can see. So now looking at the main strength of this tank, which is a very unique 90mm. Now its rate of fire is 7.27, which means that it's competitive, for example, with a Pershing, as far as pure DPM goes. However, this tank has fairly poor penetration with standard ammo of 173, which can't compete with tanks such as the Centurion and even the Panzer. Now this tank does 240 average damage per shot, and it can load 4 shells in its drum. It's fairly accurate at 100 meters at 0.38. Its aim time is really long at 2.9 seconds, which is why I recommend that you use vertical stabilizers as well as a gun laying drive in this tank. The strength of the US autoloaders, which I'm really going to hit home now, compared to the French autoloaders for example, is the fact that the delay between their shots is very little. The American autoloaders can unload their drum much quicker than the French autoloaders can. What this means is that this aim time can be really detrimental at long ranges, but up close the aim time really doesn't matter. If you can catch the side and the rear of a tank, then you can just unload your 4 shells, doing a potential 960 average damage to the enemy. Now this gun is fairly controversial because the very poor penetration of the AP rounds can be more than made up for if you decide to load premium rounds and you fire heat. As you can see here, the heat penetration is 300mm, which is more than enough to basically go through anything frontally. What this means is that quite a few players only fire heat in these tanks, and this makes up for the poor aim time and the fact that you only have 4 shells and you really need to make all of them count if you want to do the damage to the enemy. These rounds are very expensive though, costing 4,000 credits a shot when they're not discounted. What this means is that if you fire a clip, you're paying 16,000 credits to do an average of 960 damage to your opponent. So while this is not financially viable in the long run, careful use of heat rounds to really secure tricky situations and very close games is recommended. I'm still debating how many drums of heat to carry in this tank, whether I want to carry 2, 3 or 4. At the moment I'm still testing. I haven't really played this tank very much, as you guys will be able to see. It took me 12 games to get my mastery badge in this tank, and so far obviously this is a small numbers problem, but we're getting very successful results to say the least, with 2,700 damage a game and 1,300 average experience. I'm going to be as bold to say that this tank is quite overpowered, as long as you're willing to fire heat in certain situations. It's got a very good view range as well, of 400 meters, which means that even though you don't use optics or binoculars on this tank, it can do some serious spotting for its team. I've seen, for example, T69's carry games on Red Shire by working the mid-ridge, playing very defensively, popping up, doing insane amounts of burst damage on targets, pulling back, and basically being a medium scout, a pure medium tank. I would say, unlike the AMX 5100, which has to be played as more of an assassin, this tank can almost be played as a pure medium tank. It really appeals to me, and I really think that I'm going to be keeping this tank in my garage after I finish the grind. So let's take a look at some gameplay in our T69. We can see we're playing on Abbey, and this is a fairly nice matchup. There are only tier 8 tanks against us. Over half the enemy team is tier 8. And we apparently have a 67% chance to win, according to XVM, which means that generally I'm going to try and play a little bit more aggressively. So, I've decided to rush the middle. I kind of want to catch some of the scouts. Maybe the Pershing, the FCM 50T, all of those tanks can really go into the middle early. If I can try and catch them, then that'll be a fantastic result. However, it's rapidly becoming apparent that there is no Pershing, there is no FCM 50T, and there's no scout tanks here. So what you've got to watch out for on Abbey is, after you make the initial move, they will be above you. They will be at this location here you can see with my mouse cursor. I see that the FCM 50T has gone east, and immediately, yep, there we go, we can spot the enemies starting to make their moves to be above me. I zero in for my first shot on the VK. Unfortunately, we couldn't quite make it. So we're going to fall back behind the wall. Still being fairly cautious here. I'm looking to see what that 87 is doing. I decide that I can go after this 87. Aiming for the weak point on top of his tank. We put one in. Second one misses, unfortunately. Third one goes in. And I unload the fourth quickly, and so I did 725 damage with 3 out of 4 shells hitting the weak point on that tier 7 British tank destroyer. He was one of their best players. In fact, he was the best player on the enemy team, but he is already out. So you guys could see exactly there what the 90mm autoloader is capable of. If you're able to penetrate every shell, it is 960 damage on average for your drum. So try and gauge the reloads of the T69 when you see me reloading at the moment. Oh, and here we've got a lovely opportunity on a Pershing. He hasn't spotted me yet. I fired through the tree. I'm not sure why I haven't been spotted so far. Unfortunately, the third one didn't go in, but the fourth one did, and we finally get spotted because we were obviously shooting through that series of trees. So, for a 69%er, we've lost 2 tier 8s already, 1 tier 7 and 1 tier 6, and the enemy have only lost 1 tier 7 TD. So right now I'm not too worried about the lonely GW Panther. I'm thinking that he'll be more worried about trying to engage the ISU and the IS-3. So consequently what I'm trying to do is basically try and harass here. I don't quite have a shot on the IS until now. And he gets executed. Unfortunately our first shot was a low roll, 219, which meant that we had to put a second one in. Knowing how quickly the T69 reloads, you'll see me reloading rapidly in this tank. To try and always make sure that I've got 4 shells ready for any situation that I get myself into. So, I decided that there are quite a few tier 8 enemy tanks coming into base. I stop here, trying to get some shots. I take a punt, doing critical track damage, and I reload. That was not very good play looking back at this now. What I should have done is realised, what am I ever going to achieve by shooting that T32 there apart from having to reload? I really shouldn't have bothered to do that. But lo and behold, we can see 3 tier 8 enemy tanks on their way in, all fairly crippled, which makes me very happy because I myself have got all my health left. So I'm stopping here because I don't want to be spotted. I want to be able to get the jump on the enemy. And I thought that they might be up there on this ridge line, and if I went forwards beyond that rock, they might be able to get me. I can see that it's basically me and an S51, with the possibility of support from a T150 and a T34. And so, oh hello! I have the jump on you. He hasn't spotted me yet because he's not turning his turret. He's tunnel visioning, so I don't want to unload until I've got the clean shot. So now here's my clean shot. Now he knows what's going on. There you go, 883 damage to a T32 there. So this game is very close now. We can see it's me and we're down 3 tanks, I should say. And they've got a lot of tier 8s left. I've been spotted, which was a bit poor play there. I really shouldn't have gone so far forward and got myself spotted by the Lurve. But the 150 was giving them grief in the cap through my spotting. And the T150 did a great job there to be able to take out that Lurve from range in a tier 6 tank. It's no surprise that the T150 is a unicum. Alright, so now what I'm thinking. The FCM50T has gone west. There's a VK4502 on the mid-ridge, and there's an ARL44 as well. And look at the amount of enemy tanks in the enemy base. It's me and 2 tier 6 tanks against 3 tier 8s, a tier 7 RT and an RL as well. This FCM50T is getting engaged hard, and oh my god, here we go, it's time to play World of Tanks. I realise that that's not an effective shot to make. There's no way that I'm going to be penetrating that guy, but I make 1 kill on him. Unfortunately missed the second shell. I'm hoping that I can get the third in, and the T150 makes a good hit. So what you see me here now doing is realising I can't really engage that VK4502 frontally with my regular rounds. So you see me loading my first clip of heat in the game. Now, as you heard, my pre-game analysis, the heat rounds have got 300 millimeters of penetration. 300 millimeters, so 173 millimeters of penetration with the AP rounds goes to 300 with the heat rounds. What this means is that you have more than enough punch to get through armor on such tanks as the VK4502. And I mean, he's not a bad player. I know that the 2 remaining players are not terror scrubs, and that really I need to try and outplay them here if I want to carry this game. So here we go, we got the spot off on him. And he has got himself into some bad trouble now. Good night, sweetheart. 718 damage in very quick succession there. I'm trying to avoid the artillery fire now. So we fired 3 heat rounds at that gentleman. And our Cromwell just picked up a nice kill on the PZ. Which means that we're in a very strong position now. Just going to fast forward the game a little bit. And so here we go, we're about to make an engagement. We know that the Ferdinand was spotted in the southeast corner. And our T150 just did another fantastic job taking out their GW Panther. Most likely with our Cromwell spotting. But he just got shut down by the Ferdinand, which means there's me and a Cromwell versus a Ferdinand. I have heat loaded because I'm not messing around. I know that it's very hard for me to penetrate with the AP rounds on a Ferdinand. I thought he was there, but no, he was at the back. Time to unload on him. I try and make the track shots. I decide to take the shot because I'll unload 2 more into him. And then I pull back. Doing 929 damage to the Ferdinand with our 4 shots there. We've completely got this game now. It's me and this Cromwell. Unless I get ammo racked, the Ferdinand really won't be able to take me down with 1 hit. And we can see there where the Ferdinand was able to penetrate me, literally right on the top of the turret. So we go in for the final kill. He decides to make a rush at me to try and get me to panic. And we secure the Ferdinand, securing a fairly interesting game there, really. It was fairly close at one point. It was myself and 2 6 tanks versus a bunch of tier 8 tanks and a tier 7 artillery. But we came through with some careful play, great support by the T150, and I didn't even really have to use my health until I wanted to tank the Ferdinand at the end of the game. If I'd had low health, I would have taken out that Ferdinand a lot more tactically, perhaps using the Cromwell to spot and trying to engage the Ferdinand at range behind bushes with heat rounds. But as I had the health to play with, I really wanted to just secure the kill on the Ferdinand. So here are the post-game stats for that game in the T69. We can see we're able to get 2,272 experience, non-doubled. That's with the premium account I had. We made just under 60,000 credits for the game, which means that without a premium account, we would have lost money, considering that we fired a bunch of heat rounds towards the end. But with the premium account, we still made 18,000 credits. We fired 27 shots, hit 24 out of those 27, and of those 24, 21 penetrated the target, doing 4,344 damage. We also did a fair amount of damage upon spotting, 1,194, which is not surprising considering the excellent view range of the T69 and the likely spotting support we were giving to this T150 player who played a fantastic game as well. I absolutely love the T69. I think it's a fantastic tank and I will be keeping it even when I get to the T54E1. At the moment this tank is on special on the European servers, so it is 30% off and making 30% more credits. So if you haven't already, get yourself through your T71 and get into the T69. You won't regret it. When you're engaging these tanks, don't let them control the engagement. If you do, and you let them unload on you and then pull back, you're going to be in a hell of a lot of trouble. If you want to trade with a T69, you have to be able to weather its storm and then destroy it. Quickly decide whether the T69 is firing heat or AP rounds. If it's firing AP rounds in its clip, that means it's only got 170mm of penetration. So for example, if you're in an E75, there's no chance he can penetrate you frontally and you can just waltz into him. If you're in an IS-3, you can more or less bounce him the whole time if he's firing AP rounds frontally. However, if he's firing heat rounds, and you can gauge that by the sizzle that the shells make when they hit your tank, realize that he will probably penetrate every shot that he fires at you, even if he doesn't aim carefully. Now, is this balanced? Well, not really. Really, this tank could be very much pay to win. I think of all the tanks in World of Tanks, I think the American autoloaders actually are pay to win tanks. You can still play them effectively without heat, but if you were to play them only with heat, you would be an absolute monster in this tank. The real limitation of this tank is its low damage per clip, which means that quite often you don't have enough to take out an enemy tank before you have to reload. And also its very low penetration. Its aim time is not brilliant, but the rate of fire that it gets means that it's got the same overall DPM as other tier 8 medium tanks. So when you're playing the T69, control the engagement, use the really good gun depression combined with the fact that you can unload your shells so quickly to get the jump on the enemy, outmaneuver them with the fairly good speed limit and fairly good engine power, and really try and do as much damage as you can do. Remember that your turret armor is fairly good, but it's not amazing, and you've got to be a little bit bold in this tank. You've got to go for it. Play this tank as a damage support for the most of the game, and then wait until the mid to the end game where you can go in what I call clip enemy tanks, where you know that you will be able to kill them before you have to reload. So I hope you've enjoyed this T69 review and you've got a good idea of how you can engage these tanks if you don't have one, and also maybe a few tips if you are a T69 player. Think about picking one up in the next couple of weeks on the EU server, as they are 30% off. And if you've enjoyed this video and it's been helpful to you, think about rating it down below. I'd really appreciate it. And tell me what you think about the T69, and specifically, do you think that the T69 is the first or the worst or best example of a pay-to-win tank in World of Tanks? As always guys, thanks a lot for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.